If you look at this, this is the Wabaningo book. Dwight Bishop put it out in the early 50s, where conflict entered patch collecting with Order of the Era national committees is there was a large collector. I don't know if y'all remember, I handled a collection called the Kansas Horde, and it was from a collector from the 30s that had gone to every jamboree and was putting together 37 and 47 sets of all the sub camps, was fanatical about collecting. And he wrote every council to ask them if he could get a copy of their camp emblem and their Order of the Era emblem for him to have a display of every camp and OA emblem in the United States, to have a display at the 1951 World Jamboree. He was doing that about the same time that the Wabaningo Lodge Handbook came out, which was actually very exciting by the National Committee. And what that book, if y'all haven't seen it, it had each lodge, it had a patch shown on it. And unfortunately, when everybody saw the patch they needed, they wrote scout offices to ask them for lodge emblems. Well, these same people had heard from the Region 8 executive for the same things, and at first they mailed them out. I mean, I had copies of the letters that were sent, and they just put them in an envelope and said, "This is great, here, take it." But all of a sudden, after Bishop put this book out, every council executive was dealing with those darn patch collectors wanting these patches. And of course, a lot of the Order of the Era lodges had restricted patches even back then, or they were only sold at events to be worn. So believe it or not, that was where a patch book started the whole long-term conflict between professionals, the National OA Committee, and patch collectors. So there we go. There's Dwight Bishop, and that's what started it all. And so I'm just going to start out with some old patch books and talk about how it was done. This was done in full color. This is a very powerful book, but if you notice, it's in a college binder that you could buy, or used to be able to buy almost every college bookstore, where you would just hole punch it, slide it into this thing, and put your title on it. There's your book. But let me tell you, if I come across something from that lodge now, that book is extremely useful for me. It doesn't matter to me what the binder is. And some of the things that they put in there were not only patches, but these are things that are super interesting that they included in that book. They included some of the old newsletters. And as the world is going more and more digital, I got to tell you guys, this stuff's getting thrown away. And it's especially getting thrown away by scouting, scout offices as they merge, camps are closed. So all that paperwork that nobody wanted, go ahead and grab it, at least scan it, and include that in your book. So here's a nice little book about E. Erner Goodwin you've probably never seen before. This is simply saddle stitched, and it was done where all you had to do is basically run. These are all black and white, by the way. That they just ran a cover. They laid it out 5.5 by 8.5, saddle stitched it in the middle, and that's a very useful book. Probably one that's got stuff in there that nobody's seen that's really useful. All right, now here's an old book Chris Jensen, Jim Ellis did. This uses cone binding. And basically, you can buy the machine that punches that now, probably on eBay or Amazon. You don't have to buy them new anymore because everybody's throwing them away. But you got a hole punch each page, and then you buy these plastic sleeves that, if you used to own an office supply store like I did, I'll sell you very, very cheaply. The only disadvantage of those are they tend to fall apart, but they still look more bookish than a just something put in a 3-ring binder. While we talk about it, what makes this book useful, and I can't even imagine how somebody would write a book now on just one jamboree of everything that was issued, but these guys went back and put pricing in there. Yes, that pricing's way old, but I get some oddball jamboree item I don't know what to do on eBay. I'll look it up in here, and at least it gives me an idea that back in the 90s, this patch had a very good value, or maybe it didn't. So what we've got here is probably a book maybe some of you haven't seen here in North Carolina. And what we've got here is basically a cover that uses tabs, but is a clear cover. And the advantage of using a clear cover is that you can do a clear color copy or cardstock, and you don't have to print it right on that front book cover. It can be seen through it. And then again, in this book, they went ahead now and made color copies of it. All right, now we're really going back. This is a great book that probably needs to be reprinted. This guy took a typewriter. So there's no excuse now. And you can see he didn't like to shift. So this entire book was typed with uppercase. But let me tell you, that book's got black and white copies of just about every handbook. And again, I use that quite often because, you know, there are things in there that you may have never seen. And if you have, how many books are out there on handbooks that list every darn variety you can think of? And he just put that in a 3-ring notebook.
Hey, Johnny, what else besides handbooks did he do his catalogs on? He had a couple, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, he did one on, which is my favorite, but I didn't have an original, was the merit badge pamphlets. And he also did one on scout fiction. And Doug Bierce added to that with his book on nonfiction. All right. Now, this book's probably a good book for this reason. When you create a book, be cognizant that there are people that not only collect nothing but scout stuff, but there are other people that collect items that we collect that aren't in the collector field. And if any of y'all have ever gone to a flea market or a gun show, you'll realize there are lots of axe collectors out there that don't just collect axes from the Boy Scouts. You've got knife collectors. And so whoever wrote this book, Ed, he had the ability not only to sell it to scout people, but he could sell it to people that, you know, were knife and hatchet collectors, because it's a very professional book. The machines, again, you can find these coil binders fairly inexpensively. These lay flat, which is very nice, and especially if you're spreading it out on both sides. Or you can ask your printer just to print them for you and put them in. A lot of printers still have this, that they're still in business. Around here, little printers are going out of business left and right. Okay, this was a system we used for about 10 years at Brush Creek. It's called Channel Bind, and basically these covers cost about $2 to $5 each. You could buy 1 or 100 copies. I'm showing this book here because layout is not as crucial as you think. If you'll notice, all these little notations were typed on a sheet of paper. The patches were laid out and taped to the pages and photocopied, because I was there. And I didn't do all the photocopying. And at the time, black and white copies were very inexpensive. Color was super expensive, almost 65 cents to $1 a page. But again, if you can find this book right here, I don't even know, there's an Usher patch I'm not sure you've seen. There's little tidbits here from Okinichi that aren't always recognized as being Okinichi. They're listed in this book.
I've never seen that one, John.
That's why I put it in there. So you old guys might know this guy. It's Jim Sayers. He was a character, all I gotta say. But I mentioned this because what he does, he used to type his price list and have these duplicated and mailed with a typewriter. So he had tabbed all these entries, and that was his price list. And oh, I wish I could go back and buy everything in his price list from the 70s. But Jim put together a book that basically he kind of fudged a little bit. He added stuff from National that I'm not sure is copyrightable or not. But he put about 300 or 400 pages together of his price list and pictures, and it's just all a mishmash of different things. But I still take it around with me. I have one at the house in the office because there might be some oddball thing that I know I've seen before, but I can't remember where. And doggone it, it might be in this book, because even though he may not have been the author of it, he did list it, and he stuck in there. The other thing I want to note again, it's just like the Antique Roadshow. The reason we watch that roadshow is not so much to learn history, is we want to know the price at the end of every session. So as much as there's a controversy whether you should prices in it or not, it changes. Whatever you want to say, a book will sell better if you have prices in there. So here we go. This is the earliest other book I can find. This was very, very important because this is where it all started. People say, gosh, I don't know if I were to rewrite the OA images, I think you've got your codes wrong. They don't make any sense at all. They don't make sense. And the reason they don't make sense now is because it made a lot of sense in 1961 or 62, because in the Trader magazine that goes back in the 50s, Mike Diamond started putting in these little descriptions: X, R, C, chenille. And unfortunately, there were so few patches that, the only thing that they had to describe things were F and S. And I remember the days when an F meant it was worth less than an S. If you had an S patch, it was fully embroidered and it was worth about 3 Fs may equal 2 solids, believe it or not. So I think whether or not this is the first book, this is a very important book for OA collecting today. And as you can see, it was simply saddle-stitched, which brings us up to Bill Price's book. Oh my goodness. I think everybody's got a story about those. Like Steve Smith said, they had descriptions, pictures. Whether they were true or not, we memorized every one of them. I would not study for high school, but we sure studied on these things, because you never know who you were sitting on the bus that would test you on what lodge equal what number. They fit in your pocket. They were very inexpensive. I don't know if you know it, Bill Price had a very small collection. Everyone in the country thought he had the best collection, but when he originally put that book out, he had used Randy Reniger's patches for pictures, and so no one knew what those weren't his, but it didn't matter. He had a really good collections about 20 years later, because so many people wrote to him. I got to mention, about the same time, Paul Myers wrote a very nice book, and that book talked about not only the F. We did not necessarily know what those things meant, but in this book he illustrated to match up the descriptions with the code. So even though in the back of the book he listed restrictions, this book was nowhere near as popular. He really broke down region patches, memorabilia. It was a very insightful dictionary for patch terms. Just so you know how anyone can write a book, basically Rick and I put this book together back in the 90s. Pretty much everything in there was laid on a photocopier. And you'll notice that we also put in a checklist. And that's the other thing I think is real important if you're putting out a patch book is, yeah, we're all historians, but we love checklists. We just can't help it. So everything gets started when there's a checklist in it. So when you're writing that book, don't forget that. And so there you go. Again, this was print on a NEC printer, a word processor with a 8-inch disc that allowed me to type beautiful stuff on a piece of paper with no pictures. We laid out the pictures and we photocopied the full out of this thing from a Wednesday to a Friday at before a conclave. I think it was at UARI, where we presented it to the Council of Chiefs on Sunday. And good golly, did that create a storm of interest in North Carolina collecting. Of course, Arapahoe 2, it started out, you may not know it, Dave Lubitz basically had used a green bar paper, if you know what that is. And I think Richard and somebody was the computer whiz, and they went through David Lubitz's collection, or David Lubitz, the biggest collector in the country at the time, put all those in. And basically, you don't know this, but that was the key to this book. And the other key to that book is they also use that grid system that I don't know who came out with it first. The Region 12 book came out first, or this book came out. And then, of course, Arapahoe 1 used the same grid for the council patches and the insignia. But man, that was my wish book. That was my wish book. That was what I went to sleep thinking. I want to get that. I want to get this. I want to get that. And I'm afraid, that was the crack that got me going right there. All right, I'm going to end tonight with our book. All right, and what it's done for our lodge. So Greg and you guys have all worked hard on this, and Greg will remember they came out with a PDF of it, which was fabulous, and the PDF was free. Anyone could get it. And basically I said, Greg, let me just saddle stitch maybe 20 copies and see if anyone will buy it at the tradery. And I remember Greg saying, why would they spend money? It's free. They don't have to pay a dime. And I think we sold out in about 2 hours. And because we got to have the book, Greg. And of course, now it's nicely done. Cole, I don't know, your printer, you got a great deal on it. It's in full color. It's got the features of not only having a book, it's got the issues, it's got a checklist, and it's got little pictures beside the checklist.
Hey, Greg. Greg, I was just about to ask the same question that Lance asked. What did you guys make that in? What software?
It's done in Word, Microsoft Word.
If you guys have a template that you'd be willing to share, I would love to steal that layout wise.
Yeah, we really didn't use a template, or I didn't use a template. It was just kind of a flying by the seat of your pants kind of thing. And it ended up, it worked for everybody, and everybody liked the way it was laid out. So, feel free to use it however you want. But the printer did give us a really good deal on it. And I can't remember that it was, I think this particular issue, there's maybe 75 pages front and back. Well, it's 72 is what it's saying. And we got them for less than $10 a piece. And we keep it updated on the lodge website, but that doesn't give people the book, as Johnny says.
So what I'll share with you is that if, there, obviously any of y'all, especially you professionals out there, you know how to go out and get a quote for all the different glossy stock and everything. But if you want to just print a book, and the reason of this particular PowerPoint was not to get into the high-end professional books. What I hope everyone got out of this is that you can create a book and not be finished. For every book that's printed, there's 9 more people thinking, I will finish this book when I get it perfect. I promise you. For every book that's printed, there's somebody working on one that will never get it done. And my hope tonight is for everyone to understand, go ahead and do something. As far as software, there's a lot of free software. A lot of people told me they use Word. When I had a lot of patches and doing lists, I used FileMaker Pro. And that way you didn't have to reformat everything, but the format stayed the same the whole time.
The stuff that like Amazon is doing, where you just send it and they make the book and they'll do them one at a time for the same price as 50 at a time. And the shipping on it is pretty inexpensive. So my book that I've got, the pictorial book, is done by Amazon, and I'm paying less than $10 for that full color book and over 100 pages.
Wonderful. No, it doesn't assert me at all. And I guess my goal was to say, it's not that big a deal to print something. And my goal tonight is to get anyone here to go ahead and print, call it a proof edition. It doesn't have to be the final edition that you're going to get professionally done. Go ahead and print something, and you're going to see once you send that book out, the book's going to take on a life of its own. And you'll get you can tell people you're putting a book out and nobody will help you, but you put a book out and call it a proof edition and you make a mistake, you'll have tons of people glad to help you correct your book. I promise.
One of the advantages of the system I'm talking about is you can do 10 books, get your corrections, put them in, and the next 10 books are the second edition with all the corrections. So you don't have to buy 100 or print 100 and get stuck with them. You can do them in small batches and expand the book as you go along.
Terry, do you mind if anyone has any questions? Can they message you and give them some advice in that area?
Yeah, the easiest way is if you want to get in touch with me, it's just Groveagle, Groveagle @gmail.com.
John, would love if you or anybody else on the call has a point of view for, you were quoting a 5 cent a page if you kind of own the equipment. What kind of retail markups are kind of acceptable in the industry versus not if we were to go out to bid?
Well, fortunately, I work in a print, the fulfillment center print shop for a major corporation. We normally go we probably charge for anywhere from, for a full color page, anywhere from 15 to 20 cents a page. And if it's two-sided, we'll probably go about 30.
And Terry, I see that pretty bit there.
That's the book. It's got 115 pages. You can prorate it. It's full color. And I'm paying less than $10 a book in my hands. 10 cents a page. And you don't have to do anything except send it to them. And they'll bind it, softbound, do the cover, the whole 9 yards. And it's so simple. I mean, I've done books for 30 years, and this is the easiest that I've ever done books.
What format did you use, Terry?
I did all of this in both Word, and also I did it in Publisher, and you send it to Amazon as a PDF.
It looks like there's a lot more options today than there were 10 years ago. And so there's no excuse now for everyone here not to put a book out.
I'm really not trying to undercut anything, guys. I'm just telling you my experience in all the varieties of, I've combed the books. I've done everything that Johnny has shown you. And this that I've just now shown you is the slickest and easiest. And once you place your order with them, you have the book within a week to 10 days. Whatever amount that you've done, you've got it within a week to 10 days.
I just ordered the Tuck-Apache book that was put out a few weeks ago. It's 116 pages and shipped. It was like $14 from Amazon, and it was one of, just like Terry's talking, kind of print on demand. And I ordered it on a Thursday and got it the next Wednesday.
I just want to add, I spoke to Johnny at Pre-NOAC Tradery 2000 in Knoxville. And I said, I understand you publish. I want to do a book on Choccolocka Council. I said, but I don't have everything ready. I want to make sure it's all right.
That's
And you
right.
said, no, do it. Put out what you got, and in 2 years you'll find issues and issues. And I said, well, I want to make it expandable. And you said, no, put it in hardbound, and then come back and order another one.
Yep.
Well, to all of you younger guys, that was advice I did not heed that I wish I had done.